Hey there, folks. Hope you have had a fantastic week trading. Coming at you with this week's market wrap and sector watch. Trying to get it out early this week. Sorry about last week. Had my buddy Russell from chat room come into town, and I'm not going to lie, it was a lot of fun, but I definitely felt the pain of that fun. So, wanted to get this out early. It was a crazy, crazy week, but there's a lot to go over. And really, for the Bears, just doing a quick run through of the indexes in the markets. I mean, it's really looking pretty bullish still. We'll see what happens next week. Earnings have been so-so, not enough to really drag the markets down. And with these crazy low float, reverse split, Momo stocks that have been flying this week, it really has been quite an interesting market. So let's go ahead and I will be doing stocks to watch live this week, Sunday at 8 a.m. Vegas time. Hopefully you'll be able to join us, and we'll go through some stocks to watch for next week. But I think there are going to be some decent opportunities out there. All right, so let's just take a look. If you've been following the blog all week long, the two areas that were most impressive were the IBB. Let's just go there real quick. So the IBB, what was really impressive. So in the first part of the week, I was looking at we were coming up into this trend line here, right, as potential resistance, and we wound up coming up into it, and then we pulled back a little bit, right? And what I had talked about a couple of weeks ago is what we didn't want to see is we didn't want to see this, act as resistance and then come down, break through this 240 and put in a lower low, right? We would have had a lower high and then come down and make a lower low. Well, we came up into that resistance, had a little bit of pullback, and then popped right through it the following day, which was really impressive. So now what we want to pay attention to is we're coming up into the 200-day moving average. So we're coming up into the 200-day, and we also have this price resistance, right? We've come up into this area before and then failed right around this 286. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise if we were to come up into that 286, 287 area, find some resistance, and maybe pull back a little bit. But what we would like to see is some really positive consolidation before we try to take out that 286 and then maybe go up and test the $300 holla. So IBB closed out the week nice. Looking at coming up into the 200-day moving average. We'll see what happens there. But pretty impressive week for the IBB. Now, I think we have some, I haven't looked yet, but I know Gilead reports next week. So, if they beat and potentially raise guidance, that could be good for the sector. So a good thing to keep an eye on for next week is the IBB. And then let's take a look at the IWM. I mean, this is pretty, right? Look, we are overbought. We have some overbought conditions, but we are consolidating. Everyone, seems to be talking about the fact the VIX is so low. There's a lot of complacency, and that is very true. But it almost seems like everybody is just, dying to see us roll over and break down. The markets rarely do what everybody wants to see. A lot of times it does just the opposite. So coming up, you look at the IWM, it's consolidating right where it should be consolidating at a potential area of support and resistance, this 120. Look, if we can take out 121 with some conviction, I think we're going to maybe potentially break out, and maybe we come back up and test these highs back here in the IWM up in the 130 area. Wouldn't that be amazing? So consolidating nicely, building up some energy. We've had a cross of the 50 and 100 day moving averages. Big thing for me. It just looks pretty darn bullish, even though I know there are a lot of people out there that are expecting a day of reckoning coming up here shortly. But it just doesn't, it's not showing itself, at least not right now. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. So, NASDAQ is getting really close to testing its all-time highs, right? This 5100 area is an area of potential resistance. It's acting that way. Maybe we consolidate sideways a little bit before we take out that 5100 and maybe go up and test. What is that? Let's take a look here. So it looks like 5230. Maybe we take out 5100, go up, test 52, find some resistance in that area. Let me just take a look here real quick. Actually, 5160 or so, probably find some resistance there. But, pretty healthy action. Nothing to suggest that we're going to roll over, right? So, NASDAQ looking pretty good. Let's take a look at the SMH, which was another area that has been very impressive. This one, I will say this. Let me just take a look at the Bollinger Bands here. Okay, we do have a gap on the daily. We broke over 60, which was a big deal, right? Basically put in all-time highs. Gapped up. Now we've got this gap on the daily that we could potentially, come down and fill, and then see if that 5940, 5950 area holds as support. But right now, all it looks as though it's doing is consolidating, right? Going to build up some energy before that next move. S&P 500, all-time highs. Nice run. It didn't get parabolic. It's not like it shot out of the upper Bollinger Band completely parabolic. Had a nice little move higher and now consolidating, absorbing that move, building up some energy, and really, look, what do we close at? We close at the high of the day. So pretty impressive. Looking technically, I understand that people may have some issues with the fundamentals of all of this, but technically, still looking pretty darn good. All right, so let's talk about oil. So this is very interesting to me. Oil has been pretty much weak all week long, right? We had one little bounce day, but we had 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5 days were down days in oil. And we actually, the energy names held up fairly well. And I find that pretty interesting. Now, this is my least favorite name, or least favorite sector, at least right now. IBB and IWM are pretty much my favorites at this point. But, it is pretty impressive that even though oil has been pulling back, the energy names have actually been holding up fairly well. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Let's take a look at the dollar and the strength of the dollar. So, look, just talking about the IBB, Labu, if you don't have any stocks within the biotech sector that you're that you feel comfortable playing, another option is to look at this Labu. If it breaks out over $38 with conviction, you could have a nice little pop in Labu if we get a continuation in the IBB. So worth having on the radar. But let's take a look at the dollar. So nice, we had this big pop in the dollar and then consolidation, and we started breaking out of that consolidation. Let me go back to this other chart. And, at some point, if that continues to happen, that likely will not be good for the big multinational companies. But, look, that could be good for the small caps. So we could continue to see that move higher in the small cap. So, but this will, if the dollar really strengthens, it will likely have an impact on the big multinational names. So keep that in mind. And then if the dollar continues to strengthen, that could also put pressure on oil, could also put pressure on gold and silver. So something to keep in the back of the mind. Speaking of gold, let's just go there real quick. Right, had that nice big spike in gold, and then now we've had been pulling back. Had a little bounce yesterday, but at least for now, it looks as though this is trending lower. So where could we look to maybe find some support? Right around 124, right? We've got some price support there. There is this gap on the daily that we could potentially go down and fill. If we were to break through, slice through the 50-day moving average, that could be problematic. Let me take a look real quick here. Actually, nope, okay, we're still good. Yeah, if we break through the 50-day moving average, simple or EMA, whichever one you look at, that could be problematic for gold. Let's take a look at what happened with the miners. What was kind of interesting is we had a pretty big pull in JNUG, right? Had a pretty big pull in JNUG, and JDST and Dust really didn't move all that much off of those moves in JNUG and Nugget. JNUG basically came down to $200 holler and bounced right off of it. We'll see how this holds up next week. Listen, if it breaks below 200, it could get ugly in JNUG, so you need to be careful there. Let's take a look at Nugget. Basically came down about 120 and bounced off there. We'll see what happens next week. We'll see if this area can act as support or if it winds up breaking down. But I think you need to be careful still in the gold and silver sector, or the miner sector. So this is what I mean by the XLE actually holding up fairly well. For the kind of pull that we had in oil, this is actually, the energy sector actually held up pretty well. So I think that's something to pay attention to. Financials, look at financials. Came up into this trend line right here, consolidating, right? Building up some energy to potentially take out that trend line. Industrials had a nice little pop. GE reported earnings today. I think pulled back a little bit on earnings. See if industrials pull back into this $57 range, which acted as resistance. See if this will then act as support. If the dollar continues to rise, though, that could be problematic for industrials, right? A lot of big multinationals in the industrial sector, so keep that in mind. Let's see here. Aerospace and defense. Lockheed Martin reported some unbelievable numbers, raised guidance. This is still, I think, a hot sector. Maybe you get a pullback down to this 55 area. If that happens, I think you look at some of those big defense names for potential long-term trade opportunities. They have nice dividend yields, and after Lockheed Martin's earnings, it just looks like an incredibly strong sector. Let's take a look at home builders. Home builders actually, had this big pop, broke over this area of price resistance. and now consolidating, looking like it wants to build up some energy for a potential move higher. I mean, this is what I'm saying about the sectors and the indexes just look like they're building up energy for another move higher. Now, could everything roll over? Could we have some kind of a significant event that ruins all of these charts? Absolutely, that could happen. I think there are a lot of people that are expecting that to happen, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So let's take a look at what else we got going on. Healthcare. Just keeps grinding higher. Right? Not parabolic, just keeps grinding higher. Maybe we look to consolidate a little bit here before it tries to take out 75 bucks, but healthcare looks pretty darn good. Consumer discretionary, look at that pop in the consolidation that we're looking at. There just isn't any reason to try and go short right now, right here, right? Until we resolve in one direction or the other, I think you need to respect the fact that things still look pretty darn bullish. Now look, we could just grind around. We could consolidate and go nowhere. But we do have earnings season happening. And if earnings continue to, or if earnings impress or aren't as bad as some expected, that could be enough to send us a bit higher. Let's see. Retail, even retail is, after this nice run, consolidating, looking like potentially it wants to go higher. I mean, it's a pretty clean setup. Transportation, transportation, I looked at this yesterday and I was thinking, seeing a few days in a row of weakness in transportation, maybe that could lead the markets down. And then we had this nice little bounce today and wound up closing near the high, or actually right at the high of the day, right? So maybe we get some follow through in transportation to the upside. Swift Transportation actually reported earnings, had a nice little pop. I took YRCW for a sympathy trade that actually wound up working out fairly well. I mean, it was okay. But listen, here's the deal. I'm pretty bullish. I mean, understand that I still have a decent cash position. I have been doing some nice, small or I should say short-term swing trades during the week. Done some scalp trading. It's difficult for me to start loading up on a bunch of stuff in my long-term hold portfolio at these levels because I myself do have some concerns about how far the market has moved. But look, it still looks pretty darn bullish out there technically. So I think there's going to be some great looking setups in my scans this week. Looking forward to going through them and seeing what we can find for next week stocks to watch. But the only thing I will say is if you've been trading these, if you're brave enough and you're disciplined enough to trade these low float momentum names, that's fantastic. If you're not familiar with these types of moves and what can happen with these stocks, I know it's tough to sit on the sidelines and just watch those things go, but don't chase. Don't get that fear of missing out and jumping into something that you're just not comfortable trading. Okay, be careful out there because here's the deal: when the party is over in these low floaters, a lot of people are going to get hurt because they just really don't understand what's going on. So you have to be careful out there, okay? And very disciplined. All right, so look, I hope you find this helpful. Enjoy tonight, tomorrow. Hopefully I see you Sunday morning. If not, I'll see you all next week.